I like the dog. It's friendly.
Hello and welcome back to my channel Box Office Poison. If you're new here, my name is Moxie McMurder and today I want to talk about Candyman. Obviously I'm going to be getting into some spoiler territory here, so if you'd rather watch a review that doesn't have any spoilers, I recommend checking out The Armchair Auteur. He does a great review and there's no spoilers and you really get an idea of what the film's about. Shout out to Dom. Let's get into it. Directed by Nia DaCosta and co-written and produced by Jordan Peele, this version of Candyman has been labelled a spiritual sequel to the first film from 1992, and that's a great way to describe it. This version, or sequel, whatever you want to call it, builds upon the myth of the Candyman in such an interesting way, and actually feels a lot like a natural progression to the story we learn in the 1992 version. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's start at the start. Before we go any further, I want to take a moment to just say that I love the original Candyman from 1992. It's one of my all-time favourite films, let alone favourite horror films. I have such strong memories of watching it a couple of years after it came out. I was around 13 or 14 and it was so damn good. It was genuinely scary, tragic, romantic. It felt gritty and real. It's this realistic approach that really grounded the film in the real world, despite it being based around an urban legend. The original has such a distinct feeling to it. The atmosphere that's created through the score, the camera work, and of course the performances. So I went to see Candyman and initially I felt a bit underwhelmed by the film. Sure, there were plenty of things I liked about it, but I think I was expecting a better horror film. But before I get into what I didn't like or was disappointed by, I want to talk about what I did like. I don't want to do a standard review or a comparison video per se, because both these films are worth looking at on their own merits, and there are some nice nods to the original within this new version that I want to highlight.
This is a story about a woman named Helen Lyle.
Helen Lyle's story has changed. If you've seen the original film, you'll have seen the truth of Helen's story, but if you only hear the urban legend, as told by Troy in this new 2021 version, she was a crazy woman who kidnapped a baby boy who she tried to sacrifice in a fire. It makes so much sense that this is the story that's being told when you consider that urban legends often change and expand depending on who is doing the telling. So that was a nice touch that I appreciated. The film is bathed in a yellow, soft light, not quite sepia, but a very warm, dare I say, honey yellow? Yellow is all over this film, and yellow has a pretty rich history in horror. It has connotations of caution, warning, continue at your own risk, danger, etc. And not for nothing, but blood looks particularly good against a yellow background. I love the punches of colour that pop up in the costumes. They're bright but deep. It's a mustard jumper, not a buttercup yellow, and the reds are more towards burgundy than pillar box red. I can't read anything into that, but I just really like the whole colour palette that the film uses. I spotted a few instances of yellow and black stripes. One of the things I really appreciated about the set and costume design was that they didn't overuse yellow and black stripes, nor did they overuse the bee motif. One instance I particularly liked was the use of a necklace worn by the art critic that resembles a bee.
Beads.
Bees?
Beads.
Beads?
I thought it was kind of cool. The sound design and score for this new Candyman is brilliant. I love the way something simple like the sound of rain subtly changes to the sound of droning bees. Composer and co-sound designer Robert Aki Aubrey Lowe manipulated the sounds of bees and other insects, along with his own voice, saying in an interview with IndieWire that so much of the film deals with reality and fantasy, and I wanted to create these unrealities in which you had a lot of texture and multiplicity of voices. These timbral choirs I made out of my own voice connect to Daniel Robitaille and where he came from, slave trade lines back to West Africa,
and concepts of storytelling that address, in a nuanced way, the ancestors of these ghosts. I'm biased as hell when it comes to the original Candyman score by Philip Glass. The man is a musical genius. But I think Robert Aki Aubrey Lowe did a great job at making the film sound like his own. The original opening credits for Candyman in 1992 are shot from above, looking down on the city of Chicago, and we follow the cars leaving the city, crossing the river into the poorer part of the city, which includes Cabrini Green. In the 2021 version, the titles play over shots of Chicago again, this time shot from below, looking up. It's disorientating, but it also starts in the city and slowly moves towards Cabrini Green. This time it's the buildings we follow, not cars, and they are what tell us where we're going, as we start with tall business towers to the building our main characters live in, what used to be Cabrini Green. William is reading Weave World, a novel by Clive Barker, the same author who wrote the original Candyman story in his Books of Blood series. There's even a character named Clive in this new version, which I can't help but think is a nod to Clive Barker as well. So as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, this new version of Candyman seeks to build upon the already established mythos of the Candyman, and I personally really love how they've adapted and updated the legend.
Candyman ain't a he. Candyman's the whole damn hive.
Generational trauma is a complex thing, and I'm by no means an expert, or frankly anyone who should be talking about these things beyond my own experiences, so I'm going to do my best to explain my interpretation of these themes. Daniel Robitaille, Sherman Fields, Samuel Evans, William Bell are all mentioned in the film as victims of racial violence. We're shown what can be assumed to be James Byrd Jr. and George Steiny, portrayed via the shadow puppet segments in the film. With the exception of Daniel Robitaille and Sherman Fields, all these people are real. Mixing these real-world instances of racial violence with the fictional helps to blur the line of reality in the film, and again grounds it in the reality faced by so many in society. I've seen people say that this version of Candyman is so relevant due to the tragic death of George Floyd in 2020 and the greater awareness of the Black Lives Matter movement. But I personally think this film could have been released 10 years ago or 10 years from today, and sadly it will still be just as relevant. Brianna's father was an artist, and we're given a glimpse of him during a nightmare where he kills himself in front of her when she was a child. William also witnessed at least 2 traumatic events during his childhood, with Sherman and then his sister, who was killed by Candyman. Anthony was kidnapped by Candyman as a baby, and these are all traumatic childhood events, and that ties into this theme of generational trauma and how you can carry the repercussions of these traumas throughout your life. This also intersects with Anthony's art piece called Say His Name, which of course is part of the Candyman legend where you have to say his name 5 times to summon him, but it's also a reference to Say Her Name, which, who knows, may even be a tagline for a sequel, should we get one, but it's a reference to the movement for raising awareness of black female victims of police brutality, women like Breonna Taylor and Sandra Bland. Saying these women's names is a way of remembering and keeping those names in the public consciousness, much like how Candyman needs people to believe in him for him to have power. Art is a big theme in all of the Candyman films, from Daniel Robitaille, who was an artist in the first film, all the way through to Anthony being an artist in this new film. Especially in the context of profiting from black artists, and even more so when you consider the old adage that an artist's work increases in value after they die, I can't help but wonder if Anthony's art will play a part in the next film, should we get one. Will his art be even more popular now he's dead?
They love what we make, but not us.
The honeycomb quality of Anthony's scars that are taking over his body represent his becoming part of the hive, and at times these look a lot like burns. The collection of trauma manifesting as a killer, hell-bent on shedding blood in retaliation, is always going to be an interesting concept, especially one to explore through the lens of race. And anyone who claims that this version of Candyman is too woke needs to be immediately deleted from your life. That's a red flag. You're welcome. And now for the things I wasn't wild about. I wish Anthony's mum had been introduced earlier in the film. We know Anthony's been avoiding her, but we don't find out why. She's played by Vanessa Williams, who we see in the original film, and she appears in only one scene, and to be honest, it feels more like an obvious cameo than a fully fleshed out character. To have her show up earlier would have grounded her in the film. It would have been interesting to have her in the scene when Anthony first learns of the legend of Helen and see how she reacted. Perhaps she laughs it off. Whatever. Her character in the original is so memorable, I just wish she'd been given a little bit more to do. There are some smart uses of mirrors and reflections in the film as a way to show Candyman without showing him, although they don't always work for me. I still can't decide if using a hand mirror in the girls' bathroom was cheesy or genius. And actually, I found the scene with the high school girls a bit unnecessary, crowbarred in, and dare I say, borderline misogynistic, reducing teen girls to a typical stupid, vapid teen stereotype. I don't know. I just felt the filmmakers were better than that. I'm also a little unsure as to why it was necessary for Candyman to kill William's sister. I know that Nia DaCosta and actually quite a lot of other black film critics didn't like the fact that in the original film Candyman was killing other black folk. It didn't make a lot of sense to them. So it's interesting that he's still doing it in this version. But really, the worst thing I can say about this new version of Candyman was that I just don't find it that scary. For all that's great about the film, it lacks the intense atmosphere that the original has. There's a distinct lack of tension and suspense, and while I appreciate that the film's subtext being about generational trauma and racial violence as entertainment, it would undercut the film's message if it focused too much on gruesome or explicit kills. That said, there are ways to scare and unnerve without gore or exploitation, and I think it just missed the mark in terms of its ability to actually freak you out.
Me again. Thanks for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button and leave me a comment. Let me know what you thought of Candyman. Did you like it? Didn't you like it? Why didn't you like it? I want to know. Throw your opinions at me. That's it. Peace out.
If you really liked my video, you can help support this channel by buying me a coffee. I'll leave a link to my account in the description below. All caffeine is greatly appreciated. I'd also love it if you'd left a comment. Apparently it will appease the algorithm gods and it will make an old lady happy.
Who's the old lady?
That old lady is me. Have a great day and stay spooky.